Hi, my name is Julius, and I'm here with
Me, Panashe.
Megan Sae-Thang.
And Adam Ward.
Today we're going to be discussing antisocial behaviour within Northamptonshire.
Along with the police race action plan, drugs, knife crime, and stop and search. This is sort of going to be a sort of conclusion on all the podcasts we've done since last summer. Summer?
Yeah.
And I hope you guys enjoy it. So the first question is, what is the police race action plan?
Do you want to explain that one?
Yeah. So it's a national plan which all forces have signed up for in the country. And it was formed off the back of the understanding that when you look at policing and how it impacts communities, policing has disproportionately impacted the black community for many, many years. We're talking decades. And the race action plan is a plan that all forces have tried to put together and work towards to try and reduce the disproportionality in policing and the powers that we use against black communities, work more cohesively with black communities, and also increase trust and confidence in black communities in policing so that we can work together.
When did it start and how long do you think it would take to be in full effect?
So it was released in 2022. We as forces adopted it in sort of 2020 through 2022, and we've been working on it ever since. And it's evolved each year as we've kind of started to do the work. How long it's going to take? I mean, I think we need to be realistic that we are talking pretty much since policing was formed in this country, it has been disproportionate, and society is disproportionate, and society still has issues. So it's such a long road that I don't think in either of our time in policing that we've got left to do, that we will see it finished and completed. But our hope is if we keep going every single year and making changes and getting it better, at some point in the future, along with society itself, it will become better.
Right. Who have you engaged within the community to develop it?
Okay. Anyone and everyone that we can. So, but one of the biggest challenges is actually getting people to speak to us. So, quite rightfully off the back of what Megan's been saying, when you've got close to 200 years of people from certain communities fearing the police, engaging with is really difficult. And that's not the community's problem, that's our problem. We've caused this, and if you look nationally, disproportionate policing of black communities specifically, in certain police areas, you're 5 times more likely to get stop searched. And you look at these statistics. Why would those communities want to engage with us?
Yeah.
So in Northants, we're strongly committed to working with as many people as we can, but it's breaking down those barriers. And every time we make a mistake or we do something wrong, because we're human beings and we do make mistakes, it puts us one step back, because there will always be that you've just gone back to what you were doing. So it's trying to show consistent commitment that we want to change, make those changes, but we're welcome to work with anybody. Youth, elderly, doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. Ethnicity doesn't matter. Where you're from, we want to try and work with as many communities as possible to change, because it's easy for me to say I want to do X, Y, Z and make changes, but that's just from my perspective and how I've been brought up, and a lot of people won't understand sections of the community, so that's why we need so many people to work with us.
Well, how does the department collaborate with organisations or community groups to address antisocial behaviour?
Lots of different ways around antisocial behaviour specifically. Yeah. So generally, we have a department dedicated to looking at antisocial behaviour. There's a lot of work that goes around the policing of it. So that's around stopping in sections of the community from committing antisocial behaviour. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier. A lot of this is working with key stakeholders to understand why antisocial behaviour happens. So if you look at youth antisocial behaviour, specifically around town centres, most of the time it happens because there isn't a lot for youths to do, or there isn't any way to take them away from those hubs where antisocial behaviour occurs, and you'll see it periodically in town centres is a really good one, centred around food establishments. every couple of years there'll be some antisocial behaviour,
McDonald's.
etc. McDonald's, yeah.
After school, oh no.
There you go. So it's really working with like partnerships to try and prevent that. So stopping those areas, being those places where people congregate. I know you've got places in the county like Adrenaline Alley, etc., where kids can go, and not just kids, but people from all ages. But so it's more than just a policing problem; it's a community issue. So people will often label it as what the police doing about antisocial behaviour, but really it's a citizens and members of the public issue as much as it is a police issue. It's us all coming together and having a bit more community spirit around this kind of things. So, but it's the same around the police race action plan. We don't have all the answers. We ultimately have the power to stop people doing things, but it's gone too far if you get into that situation where you've got to arrest people and put those kind of punitive measures in place. What we want is to prevent it from happening in the first place.
Well, what does the police define as antisocial behaviour?
Oh, God, Megan, this will be a test for you on your next promotion process or something.
Thank you.
I'll start off before Megan starts by saying there's many different definitions of antisocial behaviour. So it depends on which police force you talk to and under which circumstance. So it can be so many periods within a certain amount of time, but I'll let Megan talk about more generally how we see it.
Yeah, I think so. Antisocial behaviour, I think, it's sometimes incorrectly labelled as a youth issue. It's not. Antisocial behaviour is committed by all ages and within all communities. So it is around, antisocial behaviour is around impactful behaviour on either an area, a person. So as a person, you could be subjected to antisocial behaviour in your house, for example, a location, like we've talked about McDonald's, or as a group as well, you've got antisocial behaviour issues. And within that, it covers such a wide spectrum of things because it can cover neighbourhood issues. So if you've got problems with your neighbours, all the way to sort of the periphery of the gang issues, because a lot of the time it may be that people on the edge of gang activity or people who are being preyed upon by people within gangs are encouraging young people to engage in antisocial behaviour almost as a divertative tactic so that they can carry on and do their bits because actually they're trying to cause issues elsewhere. So antisocial behaviour is a specific, there is, like Adam said, there's lots of different definitions of antisocial behaviour, but for our force, it's so wide that we wouldn't just couple it down to, well, it's young people causing issues out in the park, because actually it covers so much more than that. And it can even cover things sort of like bullying can then verge into antisocial behaviour because it's targeting people. If you are being targeted or if behaviours are happening around that location that are making people feel unsafe or unable to carry on with their daily life, then that's antisocial behaviour. And then it kind of goes into the wider things around vulnerability and begging and street drinking and other things like that, which also cover into antisocial behaviour. So it's so much bigger. I think sometimes the media focuses on specific areas and labels that as antisocial behaviour, so people think it's just around that one area. But it's not. It's such a wide topic.
I know you're asking the questions. Can I ask you a question? So speaking about you specifically, because you'll have a lot more understanding of that than an oldie like myself. So why do you think the youth generation specifically get involved in antisocial behaviour? What's your view?
I think it's just like they're kind of bored and there's not really any activities or anything that like really interests them or like they have anything to do. So they're just kind of grouped up, maybe like in town or like, in Milton Keynes or something like that. And they just find it something to do. And
Yeah, I think I was going to agree with your point that you made earlier when you said it's just because like we struggle to find things to do. And I think if you're in a situation where you have nothing to do, you have to kind of act. Yeah, but because I know whenever I go out, my mum's always telling me if you actually find yourself with nothing to do, don't go around looking for trouble. But yeah, I think that's just like trouble is just a result of boredom. I wanted to go back to the last topic we were talking about the what was it, race action plan, and I wanted to say, do you guys think that the riots in 2024 in summer, do you think it was like a step back or a step forward for the police?
Oh, okay. Good question.
So yeah, it's a really good question. I think it, in a really weird way, it was both. I think it was a reality check around the threat that particularly the far right elements, pose the country, and that policing needs to make sure that we evolve around that. I think there were some real positives that came out, certainly within our county. There were some real positives that came out of it, because actually throughout the disorder we were completely engaged with communities, trying to offer reassurance, understanding how they were feeling, and it was difficult as an ethnic minority myself. I didn't feel safe going out, and I changed plans, and I didn't go to places that we would have gone to, and I didn't let my kids go out as much because it was scary. And I think we were able as a police force to understand that a lot more than we did before. So I think whilst it was a step back because it shows that far right element is still growing, the fact that the communities around them came together so well and supported each other meant that in this county we didn't see any issues that we saw outside of that, which I think is a testament both to the communities that live within our borders and the policing relationships we're building up on with them.
I think it's it's a really sad indoctrination of where society's got. I speak from personal experience because I've got a 3-year-old going on a 4-year-old child, but she doesn't see colour in any way, shape or form, and she's got people at nursery are Asian, black, and she doesn't see that they're black or white. She just knows them as names, and it's irrespective. She shows them all equal love, or if they've stolen a water bottle for the day, equal thing.
Yeah.
And it might be massively aspirational or naive on my part, but that's where we need to get to, a situation where we don't actually see colour, because people aren't born racist or exclusionary. That's a learned behaviour. Society does that to people, whether it's done for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, and it can be from parents saying, don't trust the police.
Yeah.
And black people's parents have got every right to say that to their children, because they know statistically you're going to get stopped more than white, so why shouldn't they say that? But we need to move past that and as a society stop seeing colour and just start seeing people. And when we can get to that situation, then things will dramatically change. So yeah, if we could see the world through a child's eyes, I think it would help everybody. But it's naive for me to think I can change everyone like that. But what a difference it would make.
What are strategies that are in place to reduce drug-related crime in our area? I think I remember Ash Tuckley talking about it in our first podcast. We had to tell him to stop because that was another topic. Yeah.
You want to ask Ash Tuckley to stop talking? It surprises me. Quite a bit. So there's all sorts of local programs that are geographically based. So we will know in certain areas that there are gangs that will sell drugs to kids, etc. There will be programs where we try and prevent known drugs users being pulled back in, because it's really easy once you're a drug user for dealers and people that want to sell you drugs to keep you in that way because you need the market. It's a really difficult area to tackle because there is this naive belief in these OCGs that if you're in an OCG...
Oh, what is an OCG?
Sorry,
we're
talking acronyms.
Yeah.
It's like gangs, and then they would be like the higher level organised crime groups. So they paint this picture and they get people to join their gangs because they'll be like, well, if you join a gang, it's whatever the term is now, because I appreciate when I say cool, I'm not cool, but it's cool to be in a gang and look at the money, it's easy money. But the reality of the situation is that no one in those gangs make any money. They get preyed upon and then they end up going to jail. And 9 times out of 10, those individuals would make more money if they went and just got a normal job and would have all the things in life that most normal people do. Yeah. But they give this perception of a reality that doesn't exist. And then longer term, the people at the top that do make money, they eventually get arrested and convicted and go to jail and lose it all. So it's just a spiral of...
Well, so is that how you think people get like sucked in?
Yeah, almost definitely. They're sold a dream and they'll like, it'll be the new trainers or the cool car or the latest mobile phone, and it'll be, you can have that And why wouldn't people that are young think, this is great? I want to get on. I want to have nice things, and this is a route into it. But it's all a lie. And by the time people have been sucked into it, there's often no way back for them, or perceived no way back for them, because if you get a criminal record, it's much more difficult to just get employment, and then people will think, well, I can never go and aspire to be anything else because I've sucked in. So a lot of it is about trying to target those individuals that do that, but it's trying to teach people the kind of stuff that I'm saying now, especially if there's any young people listening and want to listen to somebody like me. There's no benefit in what these people are trying to sell you. You're much better off just going and trying to get a career in anything else, because even if it's a low-paid job, whatever it might be, and there's no issues with working a good day's work to get whatever the money is, I guarantee you it will pay you more long-term than being in a gang.
Yeah.
And not to mention all the hurt that comes with it, because it will hurt your family, it will hurt you. You've probably known or heard about it or seen it in the press. So many people that are injured, knife crime as a result of being around drugs. Who wants to be in there? And I can tell you for nothing, those individuals that are in those gangs, when they do get into trouble, when they get hurt or seriously injured, their gang members or their friends, their crew, whatever they want to call it, they ain't sat there by their hospital bed hoping they get better. They're not your family. But it is that perception. That's how they suck you in.
What do you think is the department's biggest issue when tackling drug abuse?
I think it's sort of a for us. The biggest challenge that we have is around the prevention and intervention side of things, because policing can only do so much, and we kind of can enforce the law, and we can do certain amounts of sort of prevention, if you like, but actually there needs to be wider structures outside of that to help to get people the help that they need. And you only have to look at things like mental health assistance for young people. Young people's mental health is really suffering, but actually the waiting lists for kind of treatment for that or help or support is huge. You're talking years. So people are self-medicating and they are smoking cannabis, etc., to try and kind of get through that. Well, actually, policing can't do anything about that element of it. And where we don't want to criminalise young people who are turning to drugs as an escape. So we go back to, it's a wider societal thing of we need more investments into kind of the healthcare elements of it, the prevention and then the intervention. And then if young people are unfortunately going to prison, they're getting help, they're getting clean in prison, they're coming straight back out. They're struggling because they're not getting housing, they're being housed straight back in where they were, straight into those gang areas where they're then being sucked back into that lifestyle. So it becomes a vicious cycle. And that's the biggest challenge for policing, I think, is breaking those elements of it.
Well, why do you think that young people's mental health is deteriorating?
I think, and it's, from what I see nowadays, the pressure on young people is massive across everything. The pressure within schooling, the pressures of living in today's society that is put upon you, the pressures of people growing up differently to the generation before them. You're probably very different to your parents, and so the lack of understanding around the society you're growing up in, especially when you then look at cultural pressures, because the cultural pressures on people to conform to a certain cultural way of life is directly impacting and clashing with the multicultural society that you're growing up in. So that's added pressures. You've got social media putting so much pressure on young people to, like we've talked about, have the best lifestyle, have the best clothes, but also not just that, look perfect, be perfect. The filters, the other stuff that comes through social media. I've got a young daughter who's just going into teenage years, and the pressure she puts on herself, she's been telling me she's fat since she was 10. And that's just heartbreaking, but that's the pressures that they're getting from schooling, from friends, from social media and wider. And then you've got on top of that the pressures around working and life choices. And there's so much for young people to have to deal with from a very young age now that it's no wonder that mental health is sort of, people's mental health is struggling. But I also think probably a positive is it's more talked about and it's more recognised now, and people's mental health is picked up at a much younger age, Whereas before we maybe saw more people going down the criminal routes or being arrested for assaulting people because they've not got the coping mechanisms to deal with mental health issues, actually, from a positive element, it's recognised now. So it's more openly talked about, especially for young men. It's becoming so much more acceptable for young men to be able to say, I am struggling or I need some help. And the help is then, whilst longer term, it takes longer to get there, but it's much more sort of supportive now, whereas before it wasn't, which is why young men particularly were the highest level of suicides.
Are you guys familiar with the Netflix series Adolescence?
Mm-hmm.
Right. How do you think that has highlighted the stuff we've been talking about in terms of mental health in young people?
Have you watched it?
I've watched it.
Just checking.
You not watched it?
I've watched some of it, not all of it. I'm behind.
It's not as cool as I am.
I'm behind.
I've watched it. Specifically in relation to what the individual or the portrayal of the story?
I think just like the story in general, with all the characters, all the young characters. Yeah.
Repeat the question for me, because I'm.
How do you think the show highlights mental health in young people and like how it affects us?
Or for your knowledge, it's about.
Don't spoil it. I haven't watched the end.
Okay, I can't.
Have you watched it?
I don't want to spoil it for
I'm
listeners.
trying to
here.
get me to watch it, but I'm
See, no spoilers.
I think the message is a bit like what Megan was just saying in the previous question. There's a lot of pressure on that particular individual, that person, and I think it highlighted, and I think there was a lot of stuff in the media around this 80-20 rule that was going around. I don't know if you heard that, but I'll explain it for Megan because she's not seen it. There was this suggestion that, and I think it's referred to in the programme, that the majority of females in the programme are attracted to the minority of males, even though clearly there's lots of different relationships nowadays. But that pressure that was in that individual, he felt at that time that he would never be liked or looked upon favourably by the girl because he wasn't in that small minority of people that were really cool, for want of a better term. And I think that's led to the mental health issues around him and ultimately led to what happened in that series, because that individual felt they were never going to be liked, had no self-worth. And then to make matters worse, when they did pluck up the courage to actually ask someone, did they want to go on a date, were ridiculed by the individual because they weren't part of the cool club or weren't in or weren't hip or whatever the term is. So that's massively pressured, because not only have you got to, you're going through all the hormonal changes when you're young and peer bonding and all that kind of aspect, you're then dealing with the feeling of no self-worth, because you're being told that X percentage of young girls or boys only like a very small minority of people, and you'd think there's no chance and there's no hope, so you go and do something quite drastic and damaging. But I suppose the key message for me in terms of children and young people in terms of their mental health is you've got to love yourself before you love other people. And I know it sounds silly, especially in a social media world, but don't worry about what other people think about you. You'll learn that when you get older, and you become more set. And that's not to trivialise being young, but we know brain's still developing up until the age of 25. The best advice I can give to young people is be happy with yourself. You don't need other people to give you worth or value. And I think that's the impact that the show has in terms of it's so detrimental to be chasing what other people think that you should have. So if you like gaming, you like gaming. If you don't want to go along with the norm, and you do what's good for you and makes you happy. So I think that's the impact it has in terms of that societal pressure that you were talking about. It really highlights that.
How does the department approach the rehabilitation and support of individuals after arrest of drug offences?
So in custody, we have healthcare workers and charity workers and help that will visit people whilst they're in custody themselves. start to offer them some help, start to signpost them to sort of help places, but also build that relationship to kind of keep them engaged with that side of things. So from an ongoing supportive element in terms of how we support people utilising partner agencies. In terms of policing ourselves, there's prevention and intervention things that we can do as I've forgotten the word, outcomes, so criminal outcomes. So you can have certain orders that can be placed upon you that almost force people to get help as well sometimes, because sometimes people are so far down that road that they don't recognise that they need that help in themselves. So that's part of it. It's around not just punishing people, but getting people to get through to that help and get them to kind of subjected to that. Anything else wider than that?
For the future, something I'm very keen on is we do a lot of work around forecasting individuals that are likely to go into crime or be affected by crime. And if you look at some of the studies that have gone on in time, it's now more than possible to actually map certain things that happen to children when they're young, and then predictably see which one of those, which proportion of those young people are more likely than not to be impacted by crime. So some of the things we want to do, and it's the future of policing and public service for me, is to stop crime 10, 20 years away from now. You've got to change the lives of those people that are being impacted by those things now. So if you're in a family and one of your parents is, abusive, or they're part of a gang, the impact that has on that kid is massive, and the likelihood then of that kid being involved in that world just goes up dramatically. So we're now working, certainly from the police perspective, with other local authorities and statutory partners and anyone that can help really to identify kids in those situations and try and push them into some kind of services that can support and help them. Yeah. Because sadly, we'll be able to know now cohorts of kids that are more likely than not going to be involved in crime, and that's preventable. But we all need to think about it in the same way, pool our resources so we can help people. You probably go to school now and you think, I know that lad or girl, and I just know they're going to be involved in crime from the way they're acting and from what they're doing now. We can help, and people can help, and that's not just a police aspect, but it's a burden of society really to all come together and try and help those individuals and give them a chance to avoid it, because people's lives aren't prescript. It doesn't mean just because you are in that situation you're gonna turn out to be involved in crime or have some of the issues you already talked about. But it is more likely than not, if you don't have some kind of intervention, that they will. So aspirationally, that's where I think the future of policing and prevention is.
Well, do you know what the highest and lowest crime rates are in of all of Northamptonshire, the counties?
Roughly, yeah. I don't have a list ingrained in my head, but I could kind of tell you. Anything in particular that you're interested in?
No, just whole crime in general, really, the whole aspect of it.
So as a county, because of the way we're situated in the middle of the country, and we've got two trunk roads that run through us, you've got the M1, the A14, and we're split like that. We've got very good transport links. So travelling criminality, we're very susceptible to. So you'll get people travelling up and down and through the county in relation to that. We're also, because of the nature of the county, some of the towns are some of the most deprived in the country. And there's many, many reasons for that. If you look at Corby, for instance, Corby is deprived primarily on the basis that a long time ago, before I was even born, if you can imagine that, we're talking way, way, way longer. They had things like Corby Steelworks that brought down lots of workers who came to work at the Corby Steelworks. It closed, and then it left a whole population of a town without work. So all the issues came from the fact that there was no work. And what tends to happen is if you get areas that are deprived and lack opportunity, guess what? it doesn't take a genius to work out that
So you're saying
crime's
like
going to follow.
high unemployment rates are linked to high crime rates.
Yeah.
I think that links back to the type of like boredom causes trouble, sort of, because if they had a job, they wouldn't be doing or anything else really.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if kids grow up thinking, oh, there's no chance of me getting a job,
Yeah.
then the pull and draw of that, oh, I'll get involved in a gang and then maybe I can sell drugs to make money, because they think that there's no opportunity. So that is a real issue for the county in terms of some of those issues with higher deprivation rates naturally lead to higher criminality, but something we're working on a lot to bring in. We work with local authorities and businesses to bring prosperity to the area, more jobs, which will naturally link to less crime rates, all those kind of aspects, but also trying to educate people in terms of don't always listen to the narrative around, oh, there's no jobs, so therefore I've got to commit crime to make ends meet, because, you know, that is a changing picture. Corby, like the example I give, it's nothing like it was 20 years ago and longer, when there was some real issues when all those thousands of jobs were lost. So, but yeah, generically speaking, we're very good for certain crime areas, certain crime types, so very low, and for other crime types we're higher. So violence, for example, serious violence, we're higher than some counties, but I think that's linked to some of that deprivation within the county. So some of those aspects that are linked directly to that, you would associate it with because of the way the county is.
Is there like specific areas where violent crime is more popular than others?
You tend to find it centred around high populations.
And then obviously town centres as well for night times and things like that. So it's
Nighttime
different
economy
times,
and all those kind of
People
things.
coming out pubs and clubs and stuff.
It's unsurprising that when people have had a bit of alcohol and they mix that with drugs, that they get themselves into trouble. So yeah, you do tend to find it in those areas.
How does the department collaborate with schools, youth organisations and community groups to prevent knife crime?
A lot of work's gone in across our neighbourhood teams with working with schools and knife crime prevention, particularly amongst the neighbourhood police officers and PCSOs. I think a big focus has been on education as well, working with the schools to help educate people around this. So yes, there have been operations where we've run policing-led operations where we've put kind of the knife arch out and things into schools. But we've also kind of worked alongside that by going into the schools and talking to young people about knife crimes. We've worked with partnership agencies as well, because obviously we know that there are other partnership agencies out there doing the same things. So we make sure that we work together. And I know that the OPFCC's office, so the police commissioner, has also set up a lot of kind of youth engagement groups around kind of engaging with young people.
What do you think is the target age to like sort of prevent young people from doing knife crime?
Under 10, primary school age. I think by the time they get to secondary school, yes, you can do some work and you can change minds, but it's changing minds by that point. I think you need to get people whilst they're young as well as in the secondary school. So secondary school, you're more able to understand the consequences, but primary school, so it's kind of throughout schooling, it needs to be that thing of throughout schooling. It's a little bit like they've introduced for kind of consent now. They start consent conversations in reception years of school. Well, that should become the norm for schooling and for us, and working with that from a very young age. But I think the one thing that we're quite looking to do or wanting to do is set up like a youth engagement forum. So we have engagement groups, IAGs they're called, across the county, and a strategic one. But the vast majority of people who are on those, and they're all made up of lots of different members of the communities who volunteer to kind of join them. But let's face it, they're all old adults and older adults as well. So actually what we are massively missing is that engagement with young people and that young person's voice and opinions. So that's one of the things wider across the force, but also specifically for the race action plan that we are looking for. We're looking for young people from black communities to come together and tell us things, tell us their opinions.
Knife crime, I'll talk a bit about this one because
yeah.
I'm quite passionate about knife crime, and it's probably one of those subjects that keeps me awake at night. I was the force lead for knife crime for quite a while, and now the strategic lead for serious violence. So it's a topic of,
I think we heard about you actually. I forgot which podcast, but one of the police officers was talking about someone that was like leading.
Could have been me.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like, it was like...
Tom Thompson.
What did he say? Like, Operation
me.
Trident or something?
Yeah, no, that was so cool.
It was so tough.
So just to sing our praises as the county, when we really started focusing on knife crime, we've had probably the biggest reduction out of any area in the country in terms of knife crime. So it's a positive thing. So because people really fear knife crime, so we've had dramatic impact in relation to that. The biggest decreases of any of the forces that were given funding to reduce knife crime.
Well, did we start off with like a high rate or like?
Yeah, and we still are. We still are, but we've reduced it significantly. So when I say we reduced it, we've reduced the rate at which people use it in the most serious offences. However, I know full well that young people are still carrying knives.
Yeah.
And the real bit of the work is trying to change mindsets. And it's a bit like money. If you go out with £10 in your pocket into a shopping centre, you're going to use it, you're going to spend it, aren't you? It's without doubt, you'll spend it on lunch, whatever it is. If you go out with a knife, you're either going to use it on someone or statistically, we know it's going to get used on you. There's, again, this perception, there's this fear that people need to carry knives for self-defence. And the message is really clear, just don't carry them.
Well, do you think, is that why the main reason people use them, like they think it's like making them safer?
I think you've got a small cohort of people that carry it because they intend to do harm. And then you've got the more majority of people that carry knives because they think they need to be safe. Mm-hmm. But in my overwhelming experience, I'll tell you that if you carry a knife, you're more than likely going to get hurt with the knife you've carried. Mm-hmm. So the real challenge is changing mindsets. And I know that's a youth thing because, again, it's a bit like being in a gang. We talked about this earlier. It's almost become cool to carry a knife, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But again, it's not cool when you're sat in a hospital bed having had that knife used on you. So the overwhelming advice is just don't do it.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to sometimes it's that lack of understanding of consequences that young people have. And that's the same for everything. And we were all like that. You don't necessarily think through the consequences. No different to if you're running along a high wall as a young person, you just kind of think, I'm running along a high wall. I don't think I'm going to fall off and seriously break something. So I think it's around that. And I think it's part of the prevention is trying to get people to understand the human elements of the victims of knife crime. And you can become a victim of knife crime as a knife carrier yourself. And I think it's understanding within policing. So from an operational perspective, what I can say in terms of I have dealt with and given first aid to a lot of knife crime victims, some of them who have made it and some of them who sadly haven't. And I can see every single one of their faces and not a single one of them expected that to happen to them or thought that would ever happen to them. So I think it's that element of understanding that bit for young people that will help prevent some of this.
Well, we've had like 2 or 3 speakers at my school talking about knife crime, and I'm pretty sure they said it's either like 2 or 3 inches that's all needed, like from a blade that could actually like deal damage or something.
2.5 inches. Between 2.5 to 3 inches will pierce the heart.
Okay.
And you don't need a huge amount of force to get that in. And it's not just around. So one of the things we now have to teach specific first aid for people for stabbings, because we have, as a police force, nationally and in our force, had to unfortunately go to so many of them. And the things that we have to teach now are around. People think you die from being stabbed in the main areas, the chest or throat. Actually, people die because they've been stabbed in the armpit because they've put their hand up to protect themselves and it's gone in that way. Or they've cut a leg and it's cut a femoral artery and then you can bleed to death really quickly in a matter of seconds. So, and it's those kind of things. It's understanding those risks. It's not just around don't get stabbed in the heart. It's around any knife injury could be fatal.
The way to think about knives and knife carry, they call it habitual knife carry. So people are either carrying them because they think it's cool or they want to, or they're fearful. The key aspect around carrying those knives is more than likely, if something happens and you pull it, something life-changing is going to happen. And we need to create an environment where people think it's wrong to carry. So at the moment, I think people think it's okay and they feel the need to it. But the vast majority of people don't carry knives. If that vast majority make it a hostile environment for people to carry knives, so for example, if someone's carrying a knife at school, I don't want to get into this whole grass thing and all those kind of things, and I've heard all this terminology of snitches get stitches and all that kind of thing. But this is worse, because that person could end your life or someone else's by a mistake, just by carrying that knife. It needs to become just a culture and a society where knives are just things you don't have. I liken it to, certainly when I was at school, if someone said something about your mother or your mum, it was like a pride thing, wasn't it? And no one would allow that. And you'd like, well, I'm going to defend my mum's honour now, and that was often a fight or whatever it was. And I don't think times have changed from the smiles on your faces. Carrying a knife should be the same. Someone carrying a knife, that should be no different, because you're putting everyone in danger. Why would you want to put your life or anyone else's life in danger? Because even if they just do something silly, like they fall off the bike and it lands on the wrong way, they're just dangerous things. People cut themselves and have to go to hospital just cooking dinner. So imagine what you're going to do with one of those things if you've got intent to cause someone harm. So we need to make it just an environment where it is unacceptable, just as unacceptable as it is to slag off your mum or something along those lines. You know what I mean?
How do you address issues of people carrying knives for self-protection versus those who carry them for criminal intent?
I think that's what I was kind of just referring to. So we need to educate people in terms of it's a false analogy. If you carry it for protection, it's not going to protect you. It's either going to make you hurt somebody, which means if you do hurt somebody with a knife, your life is going to be seriously impacted, because you're probably going to go to prison for a good amount of time. Nobody wants that. You're more than likely going to get that knife used on you, which means your life is going to, again, be seriously impacted. Worst case scenario, that is, you might lose your life. So it's not protection. It doesn't defend you in any way, shape or form. It just puts you into a place where something more negative is going to happen to you. And then if you are in a situation when you are fearful or you're worried about it, tell us. We don't have to tell anyone that you've told us. We'll go and deal with that, or tell someone in responsibility who can deal with it. It transcends that grassing or those kind of things, because this is so fundamentally unacceptable. Why would you want anyone to put you in a position where they could hurt you, your family or others? Because it goes way beyond those kind of, friendships and being cool at school. We're talking about, in some of these situations that Megan was referring to, this is life and death kind of stuff. It's really serious.
The difficulty is, as well, with policing, is that we don't know. When we're dealing with someone that's got a knife, we don't know why they're carrying it. So we can't treat them as they're only carrying it for their protection. We have to treat them, because we all have families to go home to at the end of the day. We have to treat them as if they're carrying it because they are a massive threat. There's no time frame to make those distinctions. And that's a real risk to both policing and to the people that are carrying those knives. It's a real difficulty from an operational reaction as a police officer to someone carrying a knife. You won't know.
Does your sentence depend on like what type of knife you have? Like, say I had like a butter knife or something, and like Panashe had like a big machete. Like, sentence.
It can vary, but generally speaking, any bladed weapon in your possession is going to get you in trouble, big trouble. I mean, it's up to 4 years in prison just to carry a butter knife for the wrong reasons. So the simple solution is don't carry one, and I'll always refer back to that. Oh, I'm safe if I carry a knife. You're just not. You put yourself in more danger if you carry one, because the likelihood is, let's play out that scenario. Someone threatens you with a knife. and you don't have a knife, the likelihood is they threaten you for a reason, but you'll walk away. If someone pulls a knife on you and you pull a knife, well, how's that going to end? The likelihood is someone's getting injured or hurt. So it's actually the opposite of what you're intending to carry it for. I'm carrying it to defend myself, but in actuality, you're going to get hurt as a result of carrying it. So just leave it at home. Those people that get knives pulled on them, and you might challenge me on that and go, it happens at school. I know people have done it, but it's few and far between when you look at the total population of Northamptonshire. Those people who get knives carried on them and don't have a knife, invariably they walk away every time. They're fine. Those people that pull knives, these are the things you hear about in the papers, in the news, where someone's lost their life. Because where do you go from that? It's going to escalate, isn't it?
Yeah. What measures are being taken to reduce the availability and accessibility of knives in the community?
Can we go again?
Go on, you go. You're the knife crime lead.
She's having this because I used to lead on knife crime.
Yeah.
Without boring you to tears for hours, quite a few. So there's lots of voluntary organisations that are doing work in the community. You will have hopefully seen the knife amnesty bins that are around your communities. People can drop those off if your brother or sister or whatever's got something. Do them a favour and take that and drop it off in a knife amnesty bin. We've got police officers, and hopefully you'll start to see this because we're working with school teachers to provide this to provide these programmes in your lessons, so inputs around knife crime and knife carry, because it's habitual knife carry that causes the issues. The chief officers are lobbying the Home Office around knife availability, because it's still too easy to get hold of knives, and I'm sure you'll have heard stories or known of people that managed to get hold of a machete or Rambo knife, whatever you call them. How is it in this day and age that teenagers...
I mean, I remember
stupid,
it was quite a while ago, but I'm pretty sure I saw like a YouTube video saying you can get like zombie knives on Amazon or something.
So you can, it's not difficult to purchase them.
Isn't it like, didn't they change the law where like you can't buy it if it's got stuff written on it or something?
So they're trying to crack down on it, and they prohibit, every year they're prohibiting more and more knives. My personal view is you just prohibit them all. Now I appreciate that might push people to use other things, but they're going to use other things.
Because surely you could say they're props instead.
Yeah,
And
so
then
there'll always be someone that's got an excuse not to have them. So it goes back to my previous element around changing the culture of society to just say they're all unacceptable. Just don't carry them. So we're lobbying the government to make them less available, because there are websites, etc., where you can buy them, and I think the checks that they do on it is, are you 18? You click yes, and then you can buy one. Well, that's not responsible in itself, is it? And then we do a lot of test purchase operations. So we'll get some police cadets, and we'll go into stores and see how easy it is to buy knives, because sadly there still are some places like Tesco's that will sell under 18s knives and all those kind of things. So the work is massive. Weapon sweeps of local areas where we know people tend to hide these items, because the people that do carry them, because they want to cause harm, they might, because they know if they get caught with a knife, they're going to get in trouble. So they hide them in bushes and all sorts of different places. So we do like weapon sweeps of areas like that and recover knives and stuff. So it will never change. Our focus will never change around knife crime. There's always going to be a massive amount of focus to take knives off the streets, because one knife in one person's hand, and it's got potentially disastrous consequences. So
Well, how does the department try and help victims of knife crime?
There's a huge amount of work that goes on with different agencies, really, because if someone has been a victim of knife crime, like Megan's already alluded to, a lot of that's medical intervention and the recuperation afterwards. Sadly, a lot of our victims don't want to talk to the police because they might be involved in gangs, and they've termed it a way of life. How sad is that? What went back to what I was saying earlier. So your job means you get paid very little because you're in a gang. You don't get those trainers or the phone you want. And as a part of your job, you have to get stabbed to be doing the job. Now, when you paint that picture, you think, that's the worst job ever. Why would I want that job? Anyone with half a brain would go, that's rubbish.
Yeah.
But these individuals in their gangs are like, I know this is how we operate and this is how we do business. It's like, well, it's the worst business model ever because you can earn more money in any shop or business in the land. But yeah, post being injured, we'll work with those statutory authorities to give counselling and welfare support and all those kind of things around being a victim of knife crime.
What steps is the police force taking to ensure that stop and search practices are used fairly and consistently?
Go on, though.
So it's split down into two elements really, because the first is around we've invested a lot in training people, and then the other elements is around how we look at what we do. So I'll leave that one for Adam to answer around the structural side of things and things. But in terms of training, we recognise as a police force we are not culturally competent in any way, shape or form. And we are putting a lot of investment into getting people trained in understanding that. So actually using people's lived experiences to help educate people around what it feels like to be targeted, not just in policing, but across the board in terms of what we get people coming in talking about is things about what it feels like to live in today's society as a young black man, for example. So we've got sort of the cultural competency element, so people understand that people will react differently to police officers and their interactions. And previously, we would always train that, if they're acting suspiciously or if they're acting scared, then they've done something wrong. Now it's around trying to get them to understand why people are scared of the police. Because it doesn't mean that necessarily that they've done something wrong. It means that years of policing have led to them being scared of the police and the experiences and the lived experience. And it's a work in progress to break down the defensiveness of police officers, because they will kind of get defensive in terms of they'll say, but I'm not racist. I'm not a racist police officer. I'm not a bad police officer. And it's trying to get them to understand that it's not about them as an individual. It's about the uniform that they wear and the damage that's been done, and getting them to understand not just how people will react differently, but also different people's demeanours and the way that they talk and the way that they might come across might seem loud, but actually that's a cultural thing. It might be that they're not making eye contact, but again, that's a cultural thing or a religious thing or lots of other reasons why they might act differently to a white person that has been stop and searched. So I think it's education around that. And then there's a lot of education around how to use their powers safely and fairly. So every single year they get refresher trained in it. So when you first join the police, you go through, I think it's now 18 weeks of initial training, basic training, if you like. So before you're even out on the street, you get 18 weeks of training where you're taught all kinds of stuff. There's a huge amount of training now that goes in around specifically stop and search, when people should use it, what pushes your beliefs. So you have to have kind of that justification to stop and search someone, and actually understanding the legislation and their powers and how to use it fairly. And then every year they get refresher trained. And when we refresher train people on stop and search, we then talk to them about how they're doing it. We feed back in where there have been national complaints or national issues, but also in terms of locally, there's kind of a use of powers community group that meet to give us feedback on stop searches. So they dip sample lots of different types of policing powers, one of which is stop search, and they'll feed back on it. And one of the feedbacks they got was that they saw that police officers were occasionally searching people without gloves, and they felt that wasn't right. So actually, one of the things we've introduced in training is you need to remember you must always wear gloves, not just for you, but for the people that you're searching to feel comfortable. So we kind of put a lot of focus now into our training, both initial and annually, to make sure that people know their powers, know what they need to tell people, know what rights the members of the public have to ask and what information they need to provide. There's now a QR code that you can scan when you're stop and searched, which means that you can then see the information of the officer that stopped and searched you, as well as other information. There's better kind of ways of which you can complain if you feel you were unfairly treated. So there's much more. Historically, policing was a bit more secretive about things around stop and search. Now we are trying to be so much more open and upfront, and then work on training of the police officers themselves so that we can change their understanding of stop and search. And then from a how we reduce the disproportionality in stop and search. I'll hand over to you.
That's easy, it.
Yeah.
So disproportionality in stop and search. Every force in the country stops more black people than they do white. If you're black or Asian or whatever your ethnic background is, how is that acceptable? How is that palatable? It can't be. Every year, I go to the Young Black Achievers Awards.
We went to that last year.
Did you see him dancing?
I did not see him.
You're lucky. I'm
missed
told
it.
it was. I told it went viral on YouTube because it was so good.
I've got video evidence.
Might be making it up. And one of the years I went there, I sat on a table with two really prominent black businessmen, and it was a bit frosty to begin with because I could tell that they brought their prejudice into the room, and they were like, "I don't want to sit with you," and I thought that's fine. But we got speaking to them, and those barriers started to break down. And one of them told me a story, and he was saying, I'm very successful in my own right. I employ people. I've got money, etc. But if I walk down the street in Northampton and I see a white elderly lady, that elderly lady will always cross the road because she perceives me to be a threat. Because her society, she's grown up thinking that black person is more likely to be danger to me than a white person. And whether we like it or not, everyone is bringing their prejudice and what they've been taught and the society they've come into work in their lives. So I mentioned this earlier. I don't doubt that there are black families that will tell their kids, don't trust the police. And I know for a fact, because I ask people, go, would you join the police? They go, nope. Why would I want to join the police? This is because of that stereotyping in the police, and they've got every right to do that, because I started off by saying we stop more black people than we do white. Mm. So a lot of it, the longer term strategic approach is shaking people out of apathy and getting them to understand and have some cultural competence. There's a term called white privilege, and unfortunately a lot of police officers are white, and you all have seen, and you will see here today, a lot of senior officers are white men, and they don't understand white privilege and the impact that has. So they will have never had to walk down the street and feel that animosity or feel the pain of someone crossing the road because they don't want to walk past you because they're scared of you. And we need to get people to understand that. And when we start to have our police officers understand that more uniformly across the organisation, then we can understand the impact it has, because there is, without doubt, I expect that when a black youth, for example, sees a police officer, which is more than likely going to be white, there'll probably be fear, and they'll want to run away or get away from that situation because they think, oh, they're going to stop me. And then that white police officer then might think, oh, well, they're running away from me. So guess what? I'm going to stop that person. And round we go. We perpetuate this issue. And that's what we've got to break down. We've got to break down those issues. And I would love to have way more people from ethnic backgrounds joining the police, and in turn, us providing a better service where we can, like Megan was alluding to, when we stop people or whatever policing power we use, we do it fairly in a way that people can understand why we've done it, and then learn from our mistakes, because we do get it wrong. But there's a lot of work to be done around that cultural competence and cultural naivety that, for just the natural consequence of society, people don't get. But it is my hope that people are starting to see it and change, and we're already seeing some positive indicators. The very fact that there is a national police race action plan shows that there's the willingness to change, but we've just got to prove it now.
How does the force ensure transparency and accountability in the use of stop and search powers?
Who wrote these questions? Come on. So there's a structural equality board that sounds very boring. It's actually my favourite board, actually, and anyone that comes there has a hard time because I get quite passionate about this kind of stuff. So I hold the organisation to account for how we perform in those issues, in those areas. So we look at all of our policing powers, and there's many of them, so ranging from arrest, stop, search, vehicle stops, all those kind of things. And we will look at and we measure how well we do in terms of disproportionality, the outcome rates, and all those kind of aspects. Nationally, police forces don't do some of these policing powers very well in terms of their disproportionate approach. Vehicle stops is a challenge for a lot of forces and ours in terms of why are we stopping more black people in cars than we are white. We need to understand that. So that accountability is there, so we understand the data sets around why it is that we're doing. And then we have to challenge people's narrative on that, because there are still some people that will say, oh, well, you just make the data say what you want it to say to suit your narrative, and it's getting past that challenge. So once you've got your data and you can understand the situation, i.e. how you use your powers, then you need to start working on programs to affect change. And Megan was talking about it, Stop Search specifically. So Stop Search, when I was taught as a police officer some 21 years ago, and that's scary, innit? My handcuffs are older than you two. I was basically told, this is how you search someone, you pat them down, all that kind of stuff, and you must give them these grounds. But that didn't address any of the things we were talking about, and all that did was perpetuate the issue of creating a culture of them and us. What it needs to become is an opportunity to engage with those individuals, build relationships, and explain why you're doing it, and then actually that person go away thinking, you know what, that police officer's all right. I didn't feel that was like me being stopped and harassed. It was actually just quite acceptable. And then if we can do that every time, then that starts to build a culture of, do you know what, when I was stopped, actually, they weren't that bad to me. And actually, I gave them a reason for why I was there, and they didn't actually do anything. They just said, oh, fine. If we can get to that situation through the data and through understanding it, then we'll improve. And then we can look at, positive outliers and negative outliers. So if there's a particular officer that always stops black people and never gets an outcome, then we need to do some training of that individual. And likewise, if there's someone that's getting it right a lot of the time, there's probably some learning we can take from that individual. I don't have all the answers, but that's how we're approaching it. It's little improvements across the whole board of things.
Yeah, I think the other thing around transparency as well is that we've kind of thrown our doors open a little bit to communities. So anyone from any community can come and watch, of any age, so young or older, can come and watch our training. So you can come and watch what we do in terms of what we train officers on, how we train them for stop and search. They spend, in a 2-day training thing, you can look at how we use force and what we teach people. So that we don't teach headlocks, that we don't teach restraints by necks and things like that. So actually, it makes it more transparent. You can see what we're teaching. We spend 2 hours teaching stop and search annually for every single police officer. You can come and watch that and see, and that way we can kind of make it a bit more transparent and people can understand what we're teaching people.
Well, what are the main grounds and bases for stop and search?
As in, what are the main powers that we use to search people under?
Yeah.
So the main things that we would use, the most standard things that we would use are Misuse of Drugs Act. And then we would use legislation that looks at items for going equipped. And what that means is you looking for tools or other items that people might be looking to go and break into cars, buildings, commit theft from, so you got the foil-lined bags and things that people use to go and commit high-value thefts from. You can search for weapons as well in terms of that. And that's not just knives, that's any weapon, so made or adapted. So if you're carrying a sharpened screwdriver or razor blades, things like that. So, and then the other kind of less used powers that you've got is obviously if you're under certain ages, you can be searched for things like fireworks, alcohol, cigarettes, things like that. And then the much more extreme searches that we can do is around under the terrorism and also Section 60, which is a different type of stop and search power that looks more at if there's an area where mass violence has occurred or there's we're told it is going to occur. So say we're told 2 rival schools are going to meet up with weapons in certain area at this time or in this day and kick hell out of each other. Mm-hmm. We've got powers as policing to put kind of a zone around that where we can stop and search anyone within that area under that legislation specifically. But to be fair, the last few times that we've used Section 60, and we don't use it very often as a force at all, but certainly over the last 12 to 18 months, I think we've used it 2 or 3 times. We've not actually needed to search anyone under that power. So there is lots of different areas that we can use to stop search, but we don't always take those powers up.
How does the police force currently collaborate with youth groups and community organisations in Northampton to support the development of youth clubs and music spaces?
Not the best.
No, I think some of that. So we tried, didn't we? You and me, about 18 months ago, tried to kind of get young people, particularly we met up with some young musicians at one of the, actually it was the Young Black Achievers Awards a couple of years before that, and we met up with a group of really, really good musicians that actually went to the University of Northampton, and we wanted to really engage with them. But again, I think the difficulty is before we do any of that, we need to show that we've changed. We need to prove that we've changed, because we could come to you tomorrow and go, hey, we've changed, trust us. And you're going to look at us and go, prove it. Why are you any different? So we need to walk before we can run a little bit, I think, and get the structural changes in our police force right before people will actually trust and engage with us properly. And I think you can do so much engagement through music and other kind of passions around that. And we've got some really talented people across our county that we could engage with. But we need to make sure that our house is in order first.
So we have IAGs, which stands for Independent Advisory Groups. The average age makes me feel young. So we're missing a whole demographic of young people. So we're really looking at getting youth IAGs, but getting kids involved in kids, that's not fair, but the youth interested in policing and some of these aspects is difficult. But that's difficult from our perspective because we're not selling it right. So understanding your viewpoints in terms of how you want to work with us, if you do, what kind of questions you have for us and what kind of advice you can give us, we're very open to. But I think where we've gone wrong in the past is we've set something up in our terminology and gone, right, we're going to have this IAG, and you immediately thinking, oh, that's boring. You'll meet at a certain time, well, I don't want to do that. And it's the way that we set it up that doesn't get that engagement. So I'm all ears. If you've got ways in which you think youth, school kids of any age want to work with the police and can give us advice and assistance, then have at it. That'll be my challenge back, really, because I've tried with Megan and others to make this work. And it's our failings because I don't think we get the sell right. So I'm not asking for you to do the work for us, but just tell us what you want and how you want to engage with us, and then we can make that happen. I suppose would be our challenge. We'll still keep trying, but every time we do, we don't get a huge amount of response, do we?
No. Because
I have no doubt that people look at it or read the opportunity and go, boring. I'd rather be playing Fortnite or Minecraft.
What roles do you believe the youth clubs and music spaces play in preventing youth from antisocial behaviour and crimes in Northampton?
Massive.
Yeah, I think any kind of, so we've seen it with sporting and boxing, gyms, things like that. I know a lot of gyms now have opened up memberships and they've got specific times, haven't they, where younger people, because before you had to be over 18 to go and exercise in a gym, but they've opened up specific times for young people to be able to go and do that. But that is only if you can afford to.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the gap is. If you can't afford to do that, then there's issues there. But I think certainly music, sporting, anything at all, even we talked about gaming, even gaming clubs and like gaming areas where you can join as a group is huge to divert people away from antisocial behaviour, because as we talked about before, it's a lack of things to do. And sometimes when we talked about adolescence and other things, it's a lack of feeling connected to other people, and that there are people like you out there that can be quite isolating. So both of those things can be overcome by groups such as music groups and boxing things and things like that.
So my question to you is the same question. How important do you think it is?
I think it is pretty important, to be fair, like, because it keeps kids off the streets and like doing something which like obviously prevents them from getting bored and making trouble and like, you know, getting caught doing things that they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, like the amount of times I've seen like kids in reception at Inspiration FM, and they're just like talking with us or Mark, and it's just like, I think people would rather, like anyone in general would rather them be doing this instead of going out and causing trouble.
So another question.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a case of it is the let me word this the right way, just like you just termed it, so you're getting the feedback that they don't want to hang around and just get up to no good, but it's literally a case of there's just not enough out there, and as a result they get bored and one thing leads to another? Do you think that is the feedback that you get from people, kids your own age?
I'd say so, because in my head, I don't think there's any other reason kids would just want to cause trouble.
Because you don't really go out. Well, I don't anyway. You don't go out like looking to make people annoyed or like you're just having fun. You're having fun messing around with your friends and like.
And then it escalates.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
How do are we even on the right thing? Yeah. Okay. How do the police force ensure that funding for youth clubs and music spaces is distributed equated? I'm actually struggling.
Let's go with
equally. Let's go equally.
I can't say that word either.
No.
Across different communities in Northampton.
It's more of a PCC thing, so Police Crime Commissioner. So we have influence over that. So we'll give our views in terms of what are the more appropriate avenues that we think. The issue is always going to be funding, which comes from the government and Home Office. So there's only so much resource that they can put into it. I think that's a bit of a cop out, really, frankly. So there's a lot of people out there that want to do good and volunteer and have some really good ideas, and it doesn't always require money. But we use the excuse of money to say we can't explore it. So we'll go, oh, we can't do youth clubs, we can't do this because there's no money, and we've got to provide, the normal statutory services. If we don't do that, we'll be able to collect your bins, and we know what's going on in Birmingham at the moment, don't we? But I think probably some of the ideas come from yourselves and communities in terms of it doesn't necessarily need a lot of money. It just needs the will and some space and some allocation just to get us set up and start it. And I think we've lost that. But we do, so looking to the future, I'm really glad we've had these questions actually. So one of the things I think this county is missing is in the summer holidays, it's a big run of time, isn't it? And all the kids look forward to it. I remember I used to, and then halfway through like, bored now, but you don't want to go back to school. And there's not a lot of provision during the seasonality peaks. So I've got somebody in force working on that in terms of what can we offer as a county in terms of police and other statutory partners. What events can we get people to? So if that's just open days for police where you can come and see what we do, to week-long programmes, etc., designed specifically to try and prevent kids from getting into trouble, being indoctrinated into some of those gangs and all those kind of things. So we're looking at that, and we're hoping to get something up and running for this summer period. Depending on the scope and the success of that, then we'd look to increase funding and roll that out wider. So it goes back to what I was saying previously. Prevention is better than cure, isn't it? So if you can stop people getting involved in trouble and all those kind of things. But yeah, I think the funding part is often the reason you're here, but it's largely an excuse. There's people that I know and not far away from where I'm sat now, I've got some great ideas that don't require huge amounts of money, but they just require the will to do it. And that's where we really need to get to, is getting people that have got the will to do it. So, and any good ideas that come from yourselves. And I'm guessing it doesn't always have to be mega bucks. There's lots of good ideas that can come forward to do it. But yeah, I think that basically answers it.
Well, that was all of our questions that we have for you guys. So
You don't have any more questions for us? Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Unless you have any other questions for us.
Well, how long you got?
Yeah, we spend the rest of the day. I suppose my question is that I like to ask people is what are your perceptions of the police from a personal perspective?
Well, I never really had a negative perception of the police, but I think definitely being like an opportunity of working with Inspiration FM, we're doing like the podcast with the police, and I know a lot more about them. It's definitely Not even, well, obviously better than before, but it was never a negative perception for me anyway.
Yeah, I think that the fact that we've been working with Inspiration FM and the police is sort of like, if I hadn't done what I've done already, I think the view would sort of be negative. I'm not sure, because I know if I'm thinking of what my parents have told me, because I remember like year 8 times I wanted to join the cadets just for the sake of joining the cadets. I just felt like it. I was probably going to quit like 2 months in, but yeah. My mum said I couldn't because obviously history and whatever. And then I did my research and obviously I saw everything I saw. But now I think my eyes have sort of been opened and I'm like, not all police are bad. Yeah.
So you kind of asked, you preempted my question. I guess my question was going to be around knowing what you know now. Would you recommend people talking to us, working with us, or even aspiring to become a police officer? And the second part of that question was going to be, what kind of pressures do you get from your family and friends in terms of, even if you think like that, you wouldn't speak like that because you feel like you'd be the odd one out kind of thing?
Well, I think I'd definitely like recommend like people talking to you, but I think the issue is, obviously not everyone's in the position of like me and Panashe where we get to talk to you guys about stuff like this, and I think it needs to be talked about more widely in the sense of like young people would be more engaged to listen to it and actually like hear it out, so that they'd like find out, you know what I mean, like this not the police aren't negative and they're trying to do better and right the wrongs from the past.
Yeah, I feel like right now, if I was to go to school after the holidays and tell my friends, oh, maybe we should like have a conversation with the police, they'd be looking at me as if I was strange or something. Because like, I think they haven't been exposed to situations like this where they can just talk openly.
Which followed, no. Oh, I've got another question.
Are you a different question or on this?
No, on this.
Okay, you'll forget, so you go.
Okay, no, when you get to my age, you forget. So how can we do better? Because we've got access to you two now, and as you said, you've been exposed to it, and you've kind of seen a different. How do we, other than the obvious, like come and visit schools? But I appreciate that doesn't always work because people are like, I don't want to talk to you. How do you think we can have better influence over your friends to not just land and then not be listened to, but to try and change those perceptions? How do you think we could do that?
That's all you.
I know it's a difficult question, but what do you think would work with your friends, do you think?
I'm not really sure what would work, but like I know that, I'm not saying that you shouldn't come to schools, but I don't think, definitely secondary schools, it's not really like doing too much, because even now, like obviously now we're here and like we're paying attention, but if I was at school, I wouldn't really be paying attention to like if we had an assembly about it, because like I'd just be thinking about what I'm gonna do at lunch or with my friends, you know what I mean? So it has to really be something more like dedicated towards it rather than like an additional thing to part of the day, you know what I mean? But I'm not too sure how you'd go about that.
I think social media is a good way to interact with the youth. Like, because I think, yeah, especially when it comes to like maybe, I don't know, I'm not trying to say you guys should start doing TikTok dances or stuff.
Oh God, no.
But like, yeah, I think if they see you more being normal people, I'm not trying to say you're not normal, but like being normal people, because I think right now young people see the police as the police and not just still people. So yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, my question kind of leads into that one really, which is, I know we've done this, and I know previously I've come to Inspiration FM and had like a few years back and had some really good conversations with groups of people around a table where it has literally just been, I've turned up and you can ask me anything and I will answer it to the best of my ability. And I've had some most amazing, weird and wonderful questions that have come out of that, but answered them. So it was more around how do we then, if that's what helps people to be able to see police officers as human beings and stuff, how do we make that more accessible than just to the people from Inspiration FM and things like that? So accepting there's no, and I think you're right, standing up in front of a school assembly as a class or as a school and lecturing people or talking to them at them is the right way. But in terms of if we had more of an element, especially around stop and search and the race action plan and some of the more touchy subjects that people will have views on or questions on, actually, if we did a more closed door, you can ask me anything question as part of a school day rather than on top of a school day, do you think people would engage with that? Or do you think they would sit there with their arms crossed and go, no?
I think it just depends on if the person wants to, I guess, because you can't really.
Yeah, the willingness of the person. But I think in theory it is a good idea, but I just don't know like how. It all depends really, because like all schools are like different in like the way they teach stuff and everything they do. So you might get like a positive reaction out of one school and then like a negative out of another.
Okay.
One last question for me. I think when I was growing up, most people took their view of the police from TV, like The Bill. You probably don't remember The Bill. No. God, I'm showing my age. But I challenge our like media team in terms of ways in which we can get our message out better. And I'm always in my mind, I've got like social media, and media is really impactful, isn't it? Like day in the life of a cop or whatever. Do you think that would resonate? Do you think people would be interested in it to actually open up and show what policing is really like? Because people have got a perception of what we do, and that's often negative. Do you think stuff like that might help, seeing that we're real people and what a day in the life of a police officer
I think so.
looks
I
like?
think like if the police build up more of like a, not even an emotional connection, but like just like a connection with like the youth, where like you can see them as like actual people and not just like the police, just trying to do their job properly and just like throw someone in jail, you know what I mean? Like, because that's how it's kind of perceived. But if you see it as like an actual person who like cares about what they're doing and like cares about the community, and they're not just doing it for the sake of throwing someone in jail, you know what I mean?
It's good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
You're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for listening. That was me, Julius.
And me, Panashe. With.
Oh, we are not good at this, are we? With Megan.
And Adam.
Thank you.